Single dad millionaire asks his maid to be his fake girlfriend, but she unexpectedly stole his heart. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The ballroom shimmered with golden chandeliers and clinking champagne glasses. Waiters glided between powerful men in tailored suits and elegant women in glittering gowns. But at the far end of the grand hall stood a man who, despite all the wealth and attention surrounding him, looked like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. His name was Ethan Carter, a 35-year-old self-made millionaire, owner of one of the most prestigious real estate empires in New York. On paper, he had it all: success, influence, and a reputation as one of the city's most eligible bachelors. But tonight, none of that mattered. Because tonight, he was reminded of the one thing everyone whispered about behind his back: his status as a single father. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, had been left in the care of their housemaid so that Ethan could attend this gala. His mother and board members had been pressuring him relentlessly. "You need to remarry, Ethan. Lily needs a mother. The company needs a family image." Their words felt less like advice and more like chains tightening around his chest. Ethan's sharp jawline and cold gaze could silence an entire boardroom, but here, in the midst of laughter and shallow compliments, he felt strangely exposed. His wealth had built skyscrapers, but it could not erase loneliness. He caught sight of couples holding hands, women leaning into their husbands with practiced elegance, and his throat tightened. Meanwhile, across the city in a modest brownstone apartment, Claire Bennett folded laundry while keeping an ear out for Lily's giggles, echoing from the living room. Claire was not just a maid. She was warmth itself. At 28, she had known struggles that money could never soften. Her mother was ill, hospital bills piled up, and every dollar mattered. Yet despite her own burdens, she poured her kindness into caring for Lily as if the child were her own. Lily adored her. She clung to Claire's hand at bedtime, begged for her stories, and often whispered the innocent question that twisted Claire's heart: "Why do not you stay with us forever?" Back at the gala, Ethan's phone buzzed. It was a photo message from Claire. Lily in pajamas, hugging her favorite stuffed bunny, grinning wide as if to say, "I am okay, Daddy." A rare smile tugged at Ethan's lips. In that moment, he realized Claire's presence in his daughter's life was more precious than he had admitted, even to himself. But the smile faded quickly when his mother approached, her diamond necklace catching the light. "Ethan," she said firmly, "the press is watching. You cannot keep showing up alone. It is time you introduce someone by your side." His board members echoed her sentiment the next morning. "Family image is everything," one of them insisted. "Your competitors will weaponize your single status. Investors want stability." That was when the idea struck him: reckless, desperate, yet strangely inevitable. Ethan thought of Claire, the woman who already played such an important role in Lily's world. She was not a socialite, not a model draped in designer gowns. She was just real, honest, caring. And perhaps that was exactly what he needed. The following evening, Ethan returned home late. Claire was still awake, quietly mending one of Lily's dresses by hand at the kitchen table. The lamp's warm glow fell across her face, softening her tired eyes. He hesitated, unsure how to begin, then finally cleared his throat. "Claire," he said, his voice lower than usual. She looked up, surprised to see him so tense. "I need to ask you for something unusual, something important." She put down the dress and gave him her full attention. "Of course, Mr. Carter. What is it?" Ethan inhaled deeply, the words heavy on his tongue. "I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend." The silence that followed was deafening. Claire blinked, certain she had misheard. Her hands froze on the fabric as she whispered, "Excuse me, what did you just say?" Ethan's eyes did not waver. "I need someone I can trust. Someone who already cares for Lily. And I cannot think of anyone better than you." Her heart pounded in disbelief. She was just the maid. How could she possibly step into the role of a millionaire's girlfriend? And yet, she could see he was serious. This was no joke. That single request would change everything. Claire stared at Ethan, as if the world had tilted under her feet. The steady rhythm of the kitchen clock was the only sound between them. She shook her head slowly, her voice almost breaking. "Mr. Carter, that is impossible. I am your maid. I clean your home, I watch over Lily. How could I possibly pretend to be your girlfriend?" Ethan's jaw tightened, his usual commanding tone softening into something rare, almost pleading. "Claire, listen to me. I know how this sounds, but I cannot think of anyone else I can trust. This is not about glamour or appearances. This is about Lily, about protecting her, and about protecting the company from endless scrutiny." Her hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. "Why me? You could have anyone, someone elegant, someone from your world." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Because you are already part of Lily's world. She feels safe with you. You are not pretending when you care for her. That is exactly why I need you." The words struck her harder than she expected. For a brief moment, Claire saw not the millionaire everyone envied, but a father desperate to shield his daughter. Still, the thought of stepping into a spotlight terrified her. She tried to laugh it off, though it came out shaky. "You think people will believe that a maid could suddenly be your girlfriend? They will laugh at me. They will call me a gold digger." Ethan's gaze hardened. "Let them laugh. I will handle the press. What I need from you is honesty. The same honesty you show Lily every day. The rest, I can manage." Claire looked away, her mind spinning. She thought of her mother, lying in a hospital bed with tubes and monitors, bills piling higher than she could ever repay. She thought of Lily, that little girl's eyes shining whenever Claire tucked her in. And she thought of herself, always invisible, always on the edges of the life she could never have. "Of course there would be compensation," Ethan added carefully, sensing her hesitation. "I will cover your mother's hospital bills. I will make sure you never worry about money again. But Claire, this is not charity. This is a contract. You would be helping me as much as I am helping you." Her breath caught. It sounded transactional, yet there was sincerity in his voice that made her chest ache. She realized he was not insulting her dignity, he was offering her a chance, however strange, to step into a role that could change everything. She whispered, "And Lily? What happens when she realizes it is all fake?" Ethan paused, guilt flickering in his eyes. "I will protect her from that truth. But maybe it does not have to feel fake. Maybe it just has to feel like family, even for a little while." Claire's heart squeezed. She had promised herself never to get too attached. Yet she already loved Lily like her own, and the thought of giving her that illusion of a whole family, it was almost unbearable to refuse. Finally, she nodded, though her voice trembled. "I will do it, but only for Lily's sake." "Oh." Ethan exhaled, relief washing over his face. For the first time that night, the unshakable CEO looked almost vulnerable. "Thank you, Claire. You will not regret this." The next days passed in a blur. Ethan's assistant arrived with boxes of tailored dresses, designer shoes, and jewelry Claire had never dared to touch in her life. She stood before a mirror in disbelief as fabric worth more than her yearly salary draped her figure. The transformation was breathtaking, but inside she felt the same, an ordinary woman playing an extraordinary role. At the mansion, etiquette lessons began. How to hold a wine glass, how to nod at investors, how to smile without speaking too much. Ethan corrected her posture, his hand briefly touching her back, sending a confusing shiver through her. Each practice dinner ended with laughter from Lily, who clapped her little hands and declared, "You look like a princess, Claire." "Oh, still." Doubt gnawed at Claire's chest. Every time she walked through the mansion in her borrowed gowns, she remembered the smell of laundry soap clinging to her hands. The simple life she had always known. Could she really stand beside Ethan without breaking under the weight of judgmental eyes? The first real test came faster than she expected. An exclusive charity banquet was announced, one swarming with reporters and high society figures eager to dissect Ethan's every move. His mother called him with a warning tone. "Bring her. If you are serious, prove it." On the evening of the event, Claire stepped out of the car on Ethan's arm, cameras flashing like lightning. The crowd gasped, murmurs rippling. Who is she? Where did she come from? Ethan leaned down, his lips near her ear, whispering firmly, "Ignore them. You are with me. That is all that matters." Claire forced a smile, her heart racing as the crowd closed in. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but Lily's face flashed in her memory, bright with trust. She lifted her chin, took a steady breath, and walked into the storm beside him. That night marked the beginning of a game they could not afford to lose. The charity banquet was supposed to be just another staged performance. Claire told herself to smile, to nod politely, to let Ethan lead. Yet as the night unfolded, she realized that no rehearsal could have prepared her for the subtle cruelty of high society. Eyes followed her every move, some filled with curiosity, others with disdain. Whispers floated across the room. She is no one. Where did he find her? A maid, perhaps? Each word sliced deeper than the flash of the cameras. At the dinner table, a wealthy investor's wife leaned forward, her jeweled hand resting under her chin. "So Claire," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with poison, "tell us, how did you and Ethan meet? I imagine it must have been unusual." Claire froze, her throat dry. She had practiced answers, but under the piercing gaze of the entire table, her mind went blank. Ethan's hand tightened around hers under the table. His voice was calm, controlled, and commanding. "We met through Lily," he said smoothly. "Claire has been the kindest influence in her life. I could not imagine anyone more genuine." Gasps echoed softly. The investor's wife pressed her lips into a thin smile and turned away. But Ethan's words stayed with Claire long after the dinner ended. Genuine. He had defended her, not with a lie, but with the truth of her character. Later that night, back at the mansion, Claire slipped out of her gown and into her usual pajamas. She sat quietly in the kitchen, sipping tea, when Ethan entered. The tension of the night seemed to hang between them. "You did well," he said simply, pouring himself a glass of water. Claire laughed softly, shaking her head. "I nearly fainted at that table. I do not belong there." Ethan studied her, his expression unreadable. "You belonged more than anyone else in that room. Do not let them make you forget that." His words startled her. She wanted to believe him, but fear of not being enough still lingered in her chest. Days turned into weeks, and the arrangement continued. What surprised both of them was how natural it began to feel. Claire was no longer just playing the part of Ethan's girlfriend at public events. She was part of their daily lives. Mornings began with shared breakfasts, Lily giggling between them, insisting that they sit side by side. Evenings ended with Claire reading stories, while Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching silently, his stern features softening in the warm glow of the lamp. One Saturday afternoon, they visited a park together. Lily ran ahead chasing pigeons, her laughter echoing against the autumn air. Claire knelt down, helping Lily tie her shoelaces, while Ethan stood a few feet away, his heart tugged by the simple picture they made. For the first time in years, he felt something stir inside him, something dangerously close to peace. On the way back, rain began to fall unexpectedly. They rushed under a gazebo, droplets dancing around them. Claire brushed wet strands of hair from her face, laughing breathlessly. Ethan watched her, captivated by how alive she looked in that moment, unburdened by fear or judgment. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world fell silent except for the rain. Claire looked away first, her cheeks flushed. "We should get Lily home before she catches a cold." Ethan nodded, but inside he knew something had shifted. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Ethan found Claire sketching quietly at the kitchen table. She quickly tried to hide the notebook, but he caught a glimpse, a drawing of him and Lily together, smiling. He picked it up gently. "You drew this?" he asked, his voice softer than she had ever heard. Claire bit her lip, embarrassed. "It is nothing. Just something I do when I cannot sleep." Ethan studied the sketch, his throat tightening. It was not polished, not professional, but it captured something no photograph ever had: his daughter's joy, his own unguarded smile. He set it down carefully. "It is not nothing. It is priceless." Claire's eyes widened. For a moment, neither of them spoke. That sketchbook would become more than paper and ink. It was a seed planted quietly in the shadows, destined to resurface when the world threatened to tear them apart. As weeks turned into months, the line between performance and reality blurred. Claire still told herself this was just a contract, But when Ethan's hand brushed hers in passing, when his laughter rang unexpectedly at something she said, when his eyes lingered on her longer than necessary, she felt the dangerous truth taking root. And deep down, Ethan knew it too. What had begun as an act was slowly becoming something neither of them could control. The longer the arrangement continued, the more dangerous it became. Claire told herself that she was simply fulfilling a contract, but her heart whispered a different truth each time Ethan looked at her. She tried to ignore it, but love has a way of exposing itself in the quiet moments, not just the grand ones. One evening, Ethan hosted a dinner at the mansion for several investors. Claire was at his side, dressed in a simple but elegant gown chosen by his assistant. She smiled politely, careful to say little, yet whispers reached her ears. "She was a maid, was she not?" a man muttered behind his glass. "Clearly she is after his money," another woman hissed, her jeweled fingers tapping impatiently. Claire forced her smile to remain steady, but her chest burned. She excused herself briefly, stepping out onto the balcony for air. The night was cool, the city lights shimmering in the distance, but her eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. Ethan followed a moment later. "What happened?" She shook her head, clutching the railing. "They are right. I do not belong here. Every time I walk into a room, I feel like a fraud." Ethan's voice sharpened. "Do not say that. You belong more than they ever will. You have something they cannot buy: decency, honesty." Claire turned to him, her voice trembling. "Then why does it hurt so much when they look at me like I am dirt? You do not understand, Ethan. I hear it in every word they whisper. Gold digger, imposter, nobody." For the first time, his control faltered. His jaw tightened, and his words came out harsher than he intended. "If you cannot handle the pressure, maybe this was a mistake." The silence that followed cut deeper than any insult from the crowd. Claire's eyes filled with unshed tears. She whispered, "Thank you for reminding me of what I am," and walked back inside before he could stop her. The rest of the evening was a blur. Claire kept her distance, speaking only when necessary, her smile brittle as glass. Ethan tried to focus on the investors, but his mind kept replaying the look on her face, the hurt he had caused with his careless words. That night, after the guests left, Claire retreated to her small room in the mansion. She packed a bag, her hands trembling. Every dress, every piece of jewelry suddenly felt like a chain rather than a gift. She folded her maid's uniform, placed it on the bed, and whispered to herself, "I should have known better." Meanwhile, Ethan stood alone in his study, staring at the fireplace. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "You need someone who can handle this world." For the first time, he questioned whether he had been selfish dragging Claire into a world that would only tear her apart. The next morning, Lily ran through the halls looking for Claire. When she found her door open and the room half empty, her little face crumpled. "Daddy! Where is Claire?" she cried, clutching her stuffed bunny. Ethan froze. The sight of his daughter's tears pierced him deeper than any boardroom battle. He realized then that this was no longer just about contracts or appearances. Claire had become family, whether he admitted it or not, and if he let her walk away, he would lose more than an arrangement. He would lose the very heart of his home. But for now, Claire was gone, leaving behind only her sketchbook on the nightstand. Inside, Ethan found the unfinished drawing of all three of them together, him, Lily, and Claire smiling as if they were already a real family. And in that moment, Ethan understood. He had not just asked her to play a role. Somewhere along the way, he had given her his heart. The mansion felt emptier without Claire. Her laughter no longer drifted through the halls. Her gentle voice no longer guided Lily through bedtime stories. Even the mornings seemed quieter, as if the house itself mourned her absence. Ethan tried to bury himself in work, but no contract, no deal, no boardroom triumph could silence the echo of what he had lost. Lily, however, could not hide her pain. She clung to her father's hand, her eyes red and swollen. "Daddy, why did Claire leave? Did I do something wrong?" The question shattered him. Ethan knelt down, holding her tiny shoulders. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. This is my fault." That night, when Lily finally drifted to sleep, Ethan returned to Claire's abandoned sketchbook. He traced the outlines of the unfinished drawing with his finger, as if touching it could bring her back. The simple strokes revealed so much: the warmth she carried, the family she had built with them even without a title. For the first time in years, Ethan admitted the truth to himself. He was not afraid of society's judgment. He was afraid of his own heart, of letting someone in, of loving again after loss. But Claire had slipped past every wall he built, and now, without her, the mansion felt like a fortress of stone. Meanwhile, across the city, Claire returned to her modest apartment. The silence was suffocating. She thought of Lily's face when she said goodbye, of Ethan's words echoing in her mind. Maybe this was a mistake. She wanted to believe she had done the right thing by walking away, but her heart ached with every passing hour. Her mother noticed the change. One evening, as Claire sat quietly at the hospital beside her, her mother reached out a frail hand. "You love them, do you not?" she asked gently. Claire's eyes filled with tears. "It was never supposed to be real, Mom. I was just pretending." But somewhere along the way, it felt too real. Her mother smiled faintly. "The best things in life often begin that way. Do not let pride steal your happiness." Claire wiped her tears, but she could not imagine returning. Not after being reminded so painfully of where she came from, of how unworthy she felt beside Ethan's world. Back at the mansion, fate took a hand. One afternoon, Lily went missing from school after a misunderstanding with her driver. Panic spread quickly. Teachers called Ethan, who rushed through traffic, his heart pounding. When he finally found her sitting alone on a park bench, clutching her stuffed bunny, she was in tears. "Daddy," she sobbed, throwing herself into his arms. "I wanted Claire. She always comes when I cry." Ethan held her close, guilt crashing over him. He realized no amount of wealth, no image of perfection could replace the simple truth. His daughter needed Claire, and so did he. That evening, Ethan sat alone in his study, the fire casting shadows across the room. He held the sketchbook in his lap and made his decision. Enough pretending, enough contracts. It was time to face the truth. The next morning, he left the mansion and drove across the city to Claire's apartment. When she opened the door, surprise flashed across her tired face. She had expected anyone else, but not him. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice uncertain. "Why are you here?" He held up the sketchbook. "Because you forgot this, and because I forgot to tell you something important." Claire's eyes flickered between the sketchbook and his face. "You should not be here. You belong to a different world." Ethan shook his head firmly. "No, my world is empty without you. Claire, I was wrong to let you go. You are not just part of Lily's life, you are the reason she smiles. And somewhere along the way, you became the reason I smile too." Claire's breath caught, tears brimming. For the first time, he was not speaking as a CEO or a millionaire trying to protect an image. He was speaking as a man, stripped of pride, confessing his truth. And in that moment, the walls between them began to crumble. The night after the gala was a storm of headlines. Newspapers screamed with scandal. Millionaire CEO declares love for former maid. Social media buzzed with speculation. Every photo and video clip analyzed endlessly. Some mocked, some admired, and many doubted. Inside the mansion, however, none of that noise mattered. Ethan and Claire sat together in the living room, the fireplace crackling softly. For the first time, there were no contracts, no rehearsed lines, no masks. Only the two of them, finally honest. Claire held her sketchbook in her lap, the one she had nearly abandoned. Slowly, she opened it and turned to the unfinished drawing of the three of them. With a trembling hand, she picked up her pencil and completed the picture, shading in the missing details until the family looked whole. Ethan watched quietly. When she finished, he reached over and touched her hand. "That," he said softly, "is the future I want. Not the empire, not the appearances, just this us." Menda, her eyes filled with tears. She had been called names, judged harshly, and doubted by the world. But in this moment, with Ethan's steady gaze and Lily's laughter drifting down the hallway, she felt something she had longed for all her life: belonging. The next morning, Lily ran into the room, her face bright with joy. "Claire, you are back," she squealed, throwing her arms around her. Claire hugged her tightly, whispering, "I missed you so much, sweetheart." "Oh." Ethan knelt beside them, his hand resting gently on Claire's shoulder. "Lily," he said, his voice tender, "I need to tell you something important. Claire is not going anywhere. She is family now." The little girl's eyes widened, and then she grinned. "Does that mean you are my mom now?" Claire's heart stopped. She looked at Ethan, uncertain. He nodded, his expression filled with quiet certainty. "If she wants to be," Ethan said gently. Claire's tears fell freely as she kissed Lily's forehead. "Yes, if you will have me." The child squealed again, hugging her even tighter. In that moment, Claire realized the truth. She had not just been filling a role. She had become exactly what Lily needed, and exactly what Ethan had been searching for. Later that week, Ethan gathered the board and his family for a private meeting. He stood tall, Claire at his side, and announced without hesitation, "This is not an arrangement. Claire is the woman I love, and if that costs me the support of anyone in this room, then so be it." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Some frowned, some muttered under their breath. But no one dared challenge the conviction in his voice. His mother, however, rose to her feet, her expression unreadable. "You are willing to risk everything for her?" she asked coldly. Ethan met her gaze firmly. "I am not risking anything. I am choosing what matters. And if you cannot accept that, then perhaps you never understood me at all." The silence was heavy, but then, unexpectedly, Lily piped up, her small voice cutting through the tension. "Grandma, Claire makes Daddy smile. She makes me happy too. Do not you want us to be happy?" The room softened. Even Ethan's mother faltered, her stern mask cracking just enough for her eyes to glisten. She turned away without answering, but she did not object further. After the meeting, Ethan and Claire walked through the garden, the autumn leaves crunching under their feet. For the first time, there was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just two souls who had finally found each other. Ethan stopped, taking her hands in his. "Claire, I cannot promise the world will stop judging us, but I can promise that no matter what they say, you will never face it alone. Will you stay, not as my maid, not as a contract, but as the woman I love?" Claire's breath caught. The mansion lights glowed softly behind him, Lily's laughter echoing faintly from inside. Her heart swelled with a certainty she had never felt before. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Ethan pulled her close, holding her as if he would never let go again. And for the first time, Claire allowed herself to believe she was no longer just part of a story, she was home. The days that followed felt different, lighter somehow. For the first time in years, Ethan no longer moved through life, as if carrying invisible chains. With Claire by his side, the mansion felt alive again. Laughter filled the halls. The aroma of home-cooked meals returned, and Lily's joy became the soundtrack of every evening. Yet Ethan knew there was one more step he had to take. This was no longer about defying the board or silencing the critics. It was about giving Claire the security and dignity she deserved, not as an employee, not as a pretend partner, but as the woman he wanted to share his life with. One crisp autumn evening, Ethan asked Claire to join him in the garden after dinner. Lanterns glowed softly along the stone path, and the air carried the faint scent of roses. Claire followed him, her heart racing, uncertain why his hands trembled slightly as he guided her to the gazebo. "Ethan," she said softly, "what is all this?" He took a deep breath, his usually steady voice betraying a rare nervousness. "Claire, I once asked you to pretend to play a role for the sake of appearances, but somewhere along the way, the lines blurred, and I realized I was no longer pretending. I was falling in love with you." Her lips parted, her breath catching in her throat. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. It was not the most extravagant jewel he owned, but it gleamed with sincerity. "Claire Bennett," he said, dropping to one knee, "you have given my daughter the mother she always dreamed of. You have given me a reason to believe in love again. I do not want you to ever doubt your place in this family. So I am asking you now, not as a contract, not as an arrangement, but as the man who loves you. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Claire's eyes, spilling down her cheeks as her hands trembled. All the doubts, all the whispers of not belonging, seemed to fade in the glow of that moment. She saw not the millionaire CEO, not the image of power the world demanded, but the man who had chosen her above all else. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Ethan, I will." The ring slid onto her finger, and Ethan rose, pulling her into his arms. Lily, who had been peeking from the doorway, squealed with delight and ran toward them, wrapping her little arms around both. And under the lantern glow, in the heart of the garden, They stood together not as a father and his maid, not as a businessman and his image, but as a family finally made whole. The news of Ethan's proposal spread like wildfire. Some praised his courage, others mocked his choice. But for the first time, Ethan did not care about the headlines. The opinions of strangers could no longer shake him. He had already made the only choice that mattered, choosing love, choosing family, choosing Claire. Their wedding was not the grand spectacle society expected. Instead, it was intimate, held in the garden where he had proposed. Soft lights glowed in the trees, roses lined the path, and only a handful of close friends stood witness. Lily walked proudly down the aisle as the flower girl, scattering petals with a joy that filled every heart. When Claire appeared, wearing a gown simple but radiant, Ethan's breath caught. He saw not the maid the world once dismissed, but the woman who had healed both his daughter and himself. When they exchanged vows, there was no mention of contracts or wealth, only promises of loyalty, respect, and a love that would never again be hidden. As they sealed their vows with a kiss, Lily clapped her hands and shouted, "Now we are really a family." Laughter and tears mingled in the garden, a perfect harmony of joy. The days that followed brought challenges, of course. Whispers from society did not vanish overnight. But Ethan and Claire faced them together, hand in hand, unshaken. And slowly, even the critics began to soften, confronted not with scandal but with undeniable truth, the truth of a family bound by love, not appearances. Ethan's mother, once his harshest critic, visited one evening. She watched Claire read to Lily by the fireplace. The child nestled against her side, her voice gentle and steady. Something shifted in the older woman's eyes. Later, she approached Ethan quietly and said, "Perhaps I was wrong. Perhaps this is what real strength looks like." It was not an apology in words, but in that small admission lay acceptance. For Ethan, that was enough. Claire continued to sketch, her drawings filling with images of laughter, shared meals, and quiet evenings. Each page captured the life she once thought impossible, now made real. The sketchbook that began as an escape became a record of their love story, proof that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings. On a quiet night, Ethan closed the last page of that sketchbook and looked at Claire. "Do you realize," he whispered, "that you stole my heart when I least expected it?" Claire smiled, leaning into him. "And you gave me a home when I thought I would never belong." Together, they sat in the glow of the fireplace, Lily's soft laughter echoing from upstairs. The world outside might still judge, but within those walls, there was only peace. Because in the end, love had proven stronger than wealth, stronger than prejudice, stronger than fear. It was not the millionaire's empire that defined him, but the family he built with the woman who had once been dismissed as invisible. And so their story closed, not with scandal or pretense, but with justice, dignity, and a love that could never be denied.